Hello, my name's Par from Par and the Memes, starting another series that may or may not inevitably just only have one episode and never appear for the rest of my life. It's called Pretty Damn Good, where we look at singles from the past week that I thought were pretty damn good. Whether it be one off singles, lead off singles, or even deep cuts from albums I listened to this week, these are 10 of my favorite songs that I've heard from the past week and a half in no particular order. Starting off with Arms Save by Moor Mother from her new album Jazz Codes. This one features the flautist Nicole Mitchell from the Chicago Free Jazz mega collaboration that they have going on there. And seeing Moor Mother work with artists within this sort of clave makes me interested to see how she would possibly work with other spoken word slam poet artists such as Matana Roberts. Now, for the song itself, it starts off with this 3 minute, very spacey, ethereal beginning with saxophones and flutes just kind of whizzing past you with these really tight riffs. Meanwhile, Moor Mother is talking about some of the abuses, some of the traumas that she, as well as others, have experienced in their life. Sort of being emblematic of all the troubles that face America in the sense, and ultimately concluding with the idea that even in all these crazy circumstances, even a machine such as an AR might be able to save your life, despite the fact that most of it is known for killing. And that would be fine on its own, but then all of a sudden, near the 3 minute mark, a beat comes in and actually kind of encompasses all these themes together, kind of re adding some of the structures that were there beforehand. And yeah, I think this is a really good deep cut. The rest of the album's really great as well, so I definitely recommend the rest of this album. But this is probably my favorite cut from it. All right, up next we have Coconut Perfume by Ray Laurel. I kind of just enjoyed how much reminiscence I got of like a Brockhampton, maybe Dominic Fike kind of vibe from it. It is definitely very slow, lo-fi, kind of dreamy aesthetic, but a lot more bedroom driven. While the chorus has a little bit of a vocal, like, compressor manipulation on it to make it really sound a lot more altered and almost like dreamish in a sense. I haven't really heard a lot else from Ray Laurel before, but I'm really interested in this song mostly because the lyrics just sort of hit at home, kind of like the idea of loving someone that you have pictured in your head and not really anyone in particular, and yet giving very specific details nonetheless about the scenario. I don't remember if I saw this just kind of perusing around as like a one off single or if it was, actually, I could just check. Now, this is just kind of a one off single from Ray, but I'm definitely interested to see where this might lead him, especially with this kind of like writing prowess. That kind of reminds me a lot of like Sam Truth in a sense. But yeah, Coconut Perfume, good stuff. All right, what's next? Ray. Okay, another Ray. But yeah, listening to this new song, I wasn't really much of a fan or not a fan of Ray either way. I've heard her on some dance cuts like Bed by Joel Corey, as well as that song that she did with Regard. And so I was anticipating a very similar vibe going into this one, but when I heard what came out of it, I was very surprised. I mean, I knew some of the drama that she had behind her label Polydor, as well as like the whole situation of being signed to like a 4 album contract and yet not even being able to release one, despite being in it for like 8 years. So, in hindsight, I definitely should have expected this coming, this very ferocious, rage filled, like, hey, what do you know about all these systems that you have no idea that I have been through? In addition, the way the chorus kind of like amps up what register she's in, starting lower, and then the last one just kind of really giving it her all. I just really think this shows a lot of potential for her, and I can't wait to see what this comes of, especially since in the song she talks about this being a part of an LP finally. But yeah, great cut. Definitely a step away from what I thought she was going to do, but definitely taking much more steps forward as a result. And so, with this next song I want to highlight, we're going to be talking about NNAMDI's new lead-off single to his new album, Please Have a Seat, called I Don't Want to Be Famous. Now, I've been a fan of NNAMDÍ for a bit, ever since the album that he dropped in 2017, Drool. I heard one of his singles on the college radio station that I'm near, and I was like, Oh wow, this is pretty good. I should listen to more of his stuff. I think it was Honey on the Low, by the way. But with this new single, it's definitely amping up a lot more from where he left off with Brat, where it's not necessarily orchestral, but a little bit cinematic between how the very playfulness of the verses leads into these very deep and very like orchestrated sections of synth that go across all throughout the chorus. Even so, I do love the playfulness that is displayed on this track despite the evolution in a sense. In addition to talking about all the pitfalls of fame and not wanting to experience it despite, wanting to experience all the goods that it might have to offer as well. It definitely shows kind of like a two sides of a coin sort of argument, and I really do think this is probably going to be one of his best albums to date if this is what we're starting off with. All right, what do we have next? Oh, this new Daya song. I was kind of blown away by this song, mostly just because I wasn't a huge fan of her pop stuff back in, 2016. Hideaway was okay. I really didn't like Sit Still Look Pretty. Her song with the Chainsmokers was pretty good, but the drop was definitely what sold me more on the song. However, with this song, I think I'm just blown back by how more mature she sounds. Obviously, she was more of a teenager when her bigger songs blew up. So, hearing some of that more mature sort of sense in her voice, knowing that she has that better ability to control it, kind of makes me feel happy for her in a way. It also does help that this song is written like a new wave bop, essentially. Like, if you listen to this, like, windows down in the car, driving on the highway, I think you would have a great time. In addition, I just think it's a really well constructed song in terms of like the structure of the verses, as well as how that pre chorus kind of differentiates pretty well from everything around it. Overall, I think it just leads to a really well constructed song, one that I think I've listened to the most this week. I understand if you were turned off by our 2016 stuff, why you wouldn't listen to this, but with this, I feel like she's turning a new leaf, and I can't wait to see what's going to become of it. All right, this next song, "Never End Up Broke" by Simba. I again, like a lot of the artists here, I this is one of my first times kind of hearing them, but I gotta say, I was really impressed by kind of the command of the flow that Simba had, as well as the beat in general on this thing. Some people might think of this as kind of a ripoff of Pusha T, especially with some of the crack lines, like his nickname, the Baby, because he cut his crack with Similac. But I still do think it does have a personality of its own. Simba definitely seems a little bit more hungrier at the grit here. And that's even with like some of the flexing and shining that he does on a lot of this track, such as four Cuban links on I'm plotting on my fifth, as well as all of like the brand names thrown in there, like Supreme and Alexander McQueen. But I do think that there is a sense of sincerity in here because it does feel like he's trying to limit himself in some capacity, especially near the beginning of this song, as well as seeing that he is sort of indulging a lot in his sins. In addition, I feel like he does show a little bit of restraint as well as limitation to like what money can actually buy because in the chorus he talks ends it with saying money can't buy back time. For some of the stuff that he did for money, he might have ended up incarcerated as a result. In one of the lines, he's talking about how he bought a presidential and yet he wasn't even eligible to vote. So yeah, I feel like there's a lot of layers to this song, as well as the beat switching up between these very like rollicky piano lines and then to like the gospel sample between a flip of a dime. And I can't wait to see what comes out of it. If there's another album that comes out or maybe a mixtape, who knows? I'd be interested to find out. Next song. Oh, this next song is one that I found on Bandcamp. It was Radical. What was the name of it? Honestly, the whole album's pretty good as well as within the same tone as this song, but the song Radical Forms of the Unknown was definitely a highlight on this record for me. Between Noda's like melodica playing as well as Wolfer's experimentation into like digital dub with all those reverberations and whatnot, I do think that this is a really interesting piece. What differentiates this from the rest of the tracks, though, I feel is definitely the chord progression throughout because it definitely feels a little bit more frantic and minor in the way that it's played out. But yeah, I don't really have too much to say about it. It's just a really good instrumental track, and I really would love to see more of whatever these guys have in store. especially on their individual stuff, but I do think, like, collaboratively, I think there's definitely more to see down the pipeline from these two, hopefully. All right, next song is Sober by Nakia Gold and Jeremiah. I think I just really enjoy this song because it reminds me of kind of the drives that I took to college when I was starting out, and there not being a lot of radio stations. And so as a result, the only one that I would really only be able to pick up was like the rap and R&B station. As such, I do think this song reminds me a lot of like the indie cuts that I hear on there sometimes from like local artists, and I do mean that as a good thing because there's a lot of rough edges around this that really do add a sense of sincerity and sort of like homespunness to it, despite the attachment of Jeremiah's name. One of my favorite parts of this song definitely has to be the percussion and the way it kind of lines up with the guitar arpeggiation. However, don't let me undersell Nakia Gold because I think she does a lot to carry this song, especially in that third verse where the honesty of the whole situation definitely rings true about wanting to be proud for someone for, not texting or, getting with someone just because you're drunk and emotional. Overall, I think this is definitely more that kind of just applies to my sensibilities as well as my nostalgia in a bit, so I can understand if other people don't really see of it in the same light. But if you're a fan of some more low-key R&B, I could definitely see this being in your wheelhouse. All right, the next song that I want to talk about is Tongue by Rive. I don't know how to speak French, but it's French for something. Anyways, she is a French Canadian dance pop artist who has had a couple of EDM hits up in the Great North with some other producers from that region as well. However, by looking at some of those songs, it definitely seems a lot more radio friendly. I'm not sure about this one though. It's definitely a lot more explicit in some of its sexual connotations, and and it's not just subtext, it's definitely just within the text. However, what interested me most about this song was just kind of the queerness of it all, especially with this being a female focused pop song talking about another female within definitely a more sexual light. You could say something along the lines of this is pandering to the male gaze, but I do think there's actually some like genuine moments of like this woman's going to drive me out of the closet. Like I'm pretty sure that's a lyric in there. In addition, I think I really do enjoy just how upbeat this is. This is definitely a song that I could imagine getting really turned to in the club. What? What? Turnt? You never been turnt before?
It's just a funny phrase to come out of your mouth.
All right, last song. What do we got? Oh, the new Broken Bells, the lead off single from their upcoming album, We're Not in Orbit Yet. Yeah, I really do think of this as a pretty interesting piece. More so definitely because of Danger Mouse's production on here. It kind of reminds me of like some of the late era Black Keys stuff, especially along the line of like Turn Blue, which to be fair, I think is a really great album. In general, there's a sort of fuzz and mysterious to this track that I really do appreciate, alongside the vocals being pretty damn powerful, if I do say so myself. I don't really have much to say about this other than, yeah, this is pretty damn good. Maybe I should
Yeah,
end
that
all
could be
this,
the
like, end all the ties, like, pretty damn good. And then on to the next. But yeah, that was this week. There's definitely a lot more songs out there that I definitely wanted to mention, but I kind of wanted to keep this not going over for like 5 hours of me talking about my favorite songs. In the description, you'll find a playlist on Spotify for all these songs except for the one from Noda and Wolfers. That's just a band clamp. Band clamp. In the description, you'll find a Spotify playlist for all the songs I mentioned in this episode, except for the one by Noda and Wolfers. I'll just put that as a separate link. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, leave a like, a subscribe, comment, follow. Not to my house, please. And hopefully this becomes a regular series of some sort. Until next time, I've been Par. You've been watching Pretty Damn Good, and have a pretty damn good one out there. I'll see ya.